We're going to record just the panel, and then we'll turn off the recording during the audience Q&A. Cool.
In the interest of short and sweet, I will not start over. I got into Civic Tech because I wanted to use my skills to impact as many lives as I could. I was using my skills as a software engineer to work with small nonprofits to start with, and it was really rewarding because I was working with some beautiful organizations, but noticed that a lot of the work we were doing wasn't having an impact at scale. And often that was because we were limited by the size of the audience or the size of the community of the partner we were working with. And so when we discovered that we could partner with governments and community organizations who had a lot of reach, it meant that we basically got a higher social return on every hour that we spent doing our work. And so that felt really good. So we started doing more work with government, more work with organizations that were funded by government, and then the next thing we knew, we were a civic tech organization. So that's my story.
Cool. Thanks, Chuck. Hi, everybody. So I'm Anil. Let's see. I'll start with how I got into Civic Tech. So 2016, I was in San Francisco working on I had a startup with 4 other people that wasn't very successful. So, if you think about that time, like we were working on a social startup in 2016, which nobody wanted to fund. So after about 2.5 years of trying to make that happen and having some experience working with other startups, I decided that I would be better off going back to a previous life, which was working at the intersection of technology and mission. So I had spent the previous decade working with NPR and PBS affiliates in LA, really helping them launch all their digital media initiatives, social media initiatives, product, mobile, web. Like, it was a really fun time. And so I really wanted to go back to a place where at the intersection of technology and mission. And I heard about this organization called the US Digital Service. And so I was like, these guys look like they're doing some interesting work, right? It's impact at scale. They're looking for technologists. It's a tour of duty model, so it's not like a career commitment. I can go do this for a couple of years and then go figure out what else is next. So I applied. There was a requirement there that you had to be living in Washington, D.C., and I live in San Francisco, and I was like, I'll just ignore it and see what happens. So anyways, applied, got accepted, was asked to join the Defense Department, went and spent 4 years as part of the US Digital Service, embedded at the DoD, working on digital services. Did that for 4 years and then decided to, then I was asked to join the Department of Homeland Security as part of the Biden administration. Just completed that tour, 3.5 years. And so that was sort of like, so it was really like an accidental kind of detour that turned into a 7.5-year stint with public sector. And so it's been super rewarding. I am in transition at the moment. I am working with a nonprofit that is involved in the AI test and evaluation space. Think it's going to turn into a startup. We'll see. So just sort of figuring out if that's going to turn into a real thing or not.
Amazing. Hang on to it, Anil, because we'll just zigzag back. So and then we'll start popcorning around a little more. But the next question is, what is Civic Tech to you, and what's an example of a project from your history that really kind of exemplifies it for you?
Yeah, I think I think of Civic Tech as the entire ecosystem of like companies, nonprofits, civil society, and government that are really implementing technology for the public good, right? I think that a lot of times in civic tech, as was sort of said in the intro, like you might think of that like, oh, this is engineering. We're going to like build software and hardware or cloud infrastructure, all of which is true. But one of the things that I've also discovered that in addition to that, those roles which are really needed, designers, right, bureaucracy hackers, like there's also a lot of need for people in technology who want to get into policy. So a lot of government is being driven by very, very poorly written tech policy because people don't understand the technology. It's written by lawyers who mean well but don't necessarily know how to do that. And so that has led to a lot of the problems I think that we experience now in technology. So did a bunch of sort of very traditional product management type of stuff at DoD. Then I was asked to lead the Hack the Pentagon cybersecurity program, which was super interesting. But really, I think the highlight for me so far has been the last 2.5 years at the Department of Homeland Security. I got to lead the DHS AI task force on behalf of the secretary, where we really got to push using generative AI for specific mission applications, and develop the policy in parallel with that. So we led the development of the face recognition policy for DHS, the first in federal government. We got to lead the policy for AI implementations at DHS, which, as you know, is a very controversial organization. So how do you actually do this right within ethical boundaries? Was a challenge that the previous administration threw out to us. And then also, really, I think it was with Gen AI sort of taking hold, the idea was how can we use this in our mission? So Secretary Mayorkas said, you know, there are applications here to combat the importation of opioids and fentanyl. How can we use Gen AI to combat child exploitation? How can we use it in the service of disaster relief? So we really got to do a bunch of pilots, launch a bunch of pilots, work with a lot of the foundation AI companies over here to try to figure out, like, what does this mean when you're using a product or technology that is not necessarily reliable, right, in life and death missions, right? Like, how do you actually make that work? And what are the parameters? What makes it safe? What does not make it safe? Could this pilot actually work? And so, for me, those have been some of the work that we've done. Happy to jump into more detail, but that's been fun. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for that work. Zach,
Same question.
same question. Yeah. What is Civic Tech to you, and what's your exemplifying project?
Yeah, I think I agree with your sort of framing that it's civic tech feels like a little bit of a misnomer in that I think it sort of it sounds like it's just with government, but it's in my mind it's with all kinds of it almost could be called like civil society tech. It's nonprofits, it's community organizations, it's philanthropy, and I also agree that it doesn't that the tech part is in some ways a misnomer because for me, it's about helping those organizations to deliver their services better. It's a recognition that all of these organizations are critical to the functioning of a healthy society, and they all can get better, and we can all be a part of that. And it doesn't have to be about technology to help them get better. It can be about helping to redesign a process. And often in our tech projects, there's tech is sort of the sexy part that we talk about, but really the bulk of the impact and the work that we get done is the process redesign, the policy redesign, and the tech becomes sort of like the infrastructure with which we deliver that process redesign. And so, yeah, so civic tech for me is about like helping nonprofits, governments, civil society deliver services better, and then our shtick at Exegy is really focused on not just services, but specifically critical services for underserved communities. And so a lot of that means like social benefits. A lot of our work is about helping governments, nonprofits deliver social benefits more effectively. So a couple of example projects of our largest civic tech projects are both open source platforms that help governments deliver critical social services. So the one that we've been doing the longest is called Bloom Housing. We started that here in the city and county of San Francisco in 2015. It's a open source portal that helps to centralize every affordable housing opportunity, creates a single short form comment application for folks to apply and then reapply, thanks to folks in the audience who helped develop that, and thanks to google.org, who was part of getting that project off the ground as well. And then the second project that we're now doing that's an open source platform that helps deliver social benefits is called Civiform. Civiform is a product where governments can list every social benefit program that they have in one place, so folks can find everything they qualify for, apply once using using a universal application or something close to a universal application. Therein lies some of the policy redesign opportunities. And so Civiform is now live in a good handful of jurisdictions around the country. And our work now is to take these products, which we've grown from the ground up. We've taken the sort of minimal viable community approach of starting with a single community and then building many communities around that. And so like Bloom Housing started in the city and county of San Francisco and is now covering the entire region of the Bay Area, as well as some jurisdictions outside the Bay Area. And Civiform has started in one city in Seattle and is now spreading across the country. So that's our model, is taking these open source products and replicating them. So
Thank
those
you.
are some cool Civic
Yeah.
Tech projects.
J.A.
So I'm like, yes, yes, all of these things. And I guess the thing that I would add to this is that for me, it's about problem solving. And the big element, I think, where I think about that is certainly with the work that we're doing right now at Empower Work, which is really deeply listening to the needs of what people are experiencing and responding to that. And when I started Empower Work, in 2018, a lot of people would ask me sort of like, well, why do workers need a text line? Or like, why do people need support? And I was like, well, let me tell you my personal story. But in addition, I think probably many people in this room have been through situations where you may have faced a job loss or something tough that comes up at work. And there isn't really a government infrastructure to support that. Yes, there's UI or various things, but it's really disjointed and it's not really situated in terms of what people actually experience around work. But work is the central promise of opportunity here in the US. And we could debate that and whether it should be. But the fact of the matter is, like, job is your path to advancement. And when that's disrupted, it impacts everything. It impacts your family, it impacts your social fabric. And so how do we change that, and what does that look like in a different way? So I agree very much with the technology in service of, and it's, for me, Civic Tech is a lot of identifying a problem that's affecting our communities and figuring out ways to address that problem. And some of that might be policy, some of that might be building technology that addresses the problem. Some of it might be combining all those different pieces above. And one of the pieces that I guess I'm most proud of with Empower Work was at one point, the then U.S. Surgeon General declared that workplaces were a public health emergency. And I could never have imagined in 2017 or 2018 when I started Empower Work that the U.S. Surgeon General would be saying that workplaces were a key driver in the health crisis that people were experiencing across the country. And we got to partner with the Surgeon General's team to share and connect their research team with workers that we supported at Empower Work. And that relationship, not just the data, but the real people connection, helped them have a line of sight that the government wouldn't have otherwise had data or insight around. And so I think that's just a nice way of kind of bringing together both the human and the tech pieces of it.
Thank you. It's so cool to hear from all of your work. So I appreciate I
Right.
love being a listener here. Yeah. Look, I won't try to define civic tech because Sid wrote the literal book on it. So please read Sid's book. This is not
geez.
paid, but I'll take the invoice out. No, I'm kidding. I think beyond what's been said, I think tactically, I'll say two things, right? One, for me, civic tech is not about technology. Technology is a tool to help people and or do what's in the civic good, right? And so that to me is really the core of what civic tech means as I've applied it in my career. I think the second thing is the onus of delivery to improve the experience of an American public does not rest solely. It never has, and it never will. Good delivery for whatever program or service or policy you might think of right now in your head requires a mix of government players and navigators and friends and family network and trusted parties far beyond the government. And so I just want to encourage those of you that raise your hand saying, I don't know, or I'm new to this space, to think about not just government as the conduit, but all of the other players. Make sure that government is able to do its best and stand true to the promises that it might have written down on paper, but never implemented. Examples of this, your second part of your question.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a couple that come to mind. One that I want to really focus in on is the experience of connecting what is designed in policy to what is implemented on the ground. For those of you that are veterans in the space, and I see some of my colleagues here, you know that the disconnect is real. What is written down, no matter how well intentioned it was, that 1947 addendum to the SSA bill that created unemployment insurance is not delivered today the way that we need unemployment insurance to be delivered, was not delivered the way that we needed it to be between 2020 and 2023, 4. So the question about how to create a tighter feedback loop between policy design and policy implementation is one that is really top in my mind and in my work. My team at the New Practice Lab, has been really fortunate in that we are one of the few technology labs that has an entire policy army alongside our technology army. And so what that means is we didn't just build the unemployment insurance website for the state of New Jersey, but we built it in a way that the state of Connecticut came and knocked on our and New Jersey's door and said, hey, could you write our UI language and our rulemaking efforts? For those in the room that don't know what rulemaking is, it's like little p policy. It's the things that the state is responsible for, not the federal government. And Connecticut came and said, could you help us mark up our bill so that we could do what New Jersey got to do? Sure, absolutely. In the last legislative session, we just passed universal pre-K for New Mexico, y'all. Like, this is the kind of stuff that allows us to own the narrative farther upstream. Us being technologists in the room, or designers, or procurement officials, or all the people that make delivery possible. I feel like I should cede the floor. Is that
to
someone
the
else?
people? I don't know who that
Who wants
is.
to ask a question? Okay. Otherwise, I'm going to provide a second example, if that's okay.
Go for it.
Okay,
And
cool.
then we're going to get into a little more discussion.
Great. Second example I want to provide is what it means to advocate for. Okay, let me pause and put it this way. Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will not come. That's not how this works. Okay, in our work, you have to build it and then you have to advocate for it. And you have to make sure that what you built gets to the people it was intended for. And most recently, I feel very honored, and Skippy's in the room as well. A few of us here worked on Direct File, which was the IRS it's a was now.
This deserves applause. A lot of things did, but in particular, Direct File has been a dream for 25 years
That's
easily.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. Bless the Taxpayer First Act. And I feel very grateful that Direct File landed the way it did. When I was brought in to write the independent third party to Congress, when the IRA was passed in 2022, Direct File seemed impossible, truly impossible. And what made the shift was not my product chops. It was not my amazing engineering team. It was the fact that I got in front of every single reporter I could possibly find and talked their ear off about what it meant to build for a user, with a user, inside government. And I'll pause there, but I think there's a lot that cases the reality of civic tech success.
These are incredible examples. And I want to add one on that most of you probably aren't thinking about, because I think everything everybody mentioned was executive branch. And where's Stephen? There he is. Stephen McGarrigle just finished a 7-year stint at the California courts. 5, okay. A while. I was there for part of it. There's an incredible amount of need in the court system that can be improved. And when I think about civic tech, I think about institutions working better through some of the things that we've learned to do with tech, when tech is applied in a non-extractive way, when it's applied for good and for justice and for equality. I would say one of the things that have changed for me in the last few years is I think that tech needs civic tech more than the opposite. And the other thing that's really changed for me is I would have known how to tell you to get into this 6 years ago. I would have said, oh yeah, apply to be a Code for America fellow. Show up at your local hacking group. Think about applying to one of the consultancies that came out of healthcare.gov that does great work with the federal government. They're a really good place to onboard. If you're really ambitious, see if you can get a digital services team started at your city or your state. Things feel different in 2025. This is a question for anybody. What's changing, and what do you think people should do who want to continue work or start work in this space? And Ayushi is handing the mic to somebody else, anybody else.
Better?
Yeah?
Great. So I don't have a good answer, right? I'll just speak first. I think we're seeing, and Zach and I were talking about this before this conversation. Having been on the inside with USDS and Defense Digital Service, and then at DHS with the AI Core, and seeing what is happening and hearing about what is happening from my friends and colleagues, I will say that the federal space right now is going to be super challenging for a while, right? It is unfortunate, but I think it is true, and I'll go ahead and say this, I know it's being recorded, is that I think that systems are being broken and we are being set back by many, many years. In addition to the people that we are losing, who are going to be, it's going to be incredibly tough to recruit them back. There is going to be a lot of just work that needs to be done that was already done. So instead of being able to move the ball forward, whenever the next opportunity arises, we're going to be spending a lot of time rebuilding what's been broken. Having said that, I do think that there is tremendous opportunity potentially at the state and local level. That's not really an area that I've been involved in very deeply. I've done some work with the state of California, but Zach and I were talking ahead of time before this conversation about where that momentum is. There's a lot of energy, it seems, at the state level. I'm hearing a lot more coming out of the cities. So I think that there is a lot of opportunity there. And, you know, I would not, at least from my own personal experience right now, suggest looking at the federal government as a way to start your career, civic tech career. So anyways, that's just my angle on it.
Yeah, agreed with the framing that I think the list I usually walk people through. I just had a call with someone the other day who was looking to break in, and I was like, oh, this whole middle section, like,
It's gone.
yeah, that's like all these organizations don't exist.
Really sucks. We worked hard to build those spaces and those paths, I think.
Yeah, and some of the organizations that then led, that were sort of like, you know, generators themselves, that led to many other organizations being spun off or gone. And but I do think still just like showing up in communities like this is the way to get involved. I think we're stronger together, and you know, showing up in spaces like, if you can get to DC and go to the Code for America Summit, do that. But if you can't do that, take a look at every organization that shows up at the summit and just stalk them. And because there are organizations that are growing in the space, and every organization that's there at Summit is doing something interesting. And so, like, look for those hubs, look for those communities. I want to be really excited about the state and local space. That's where most of our work is, and there is a lot of energy and excitement around, like, state and local is going to fill the gap. The concern I have is that I don't see the resourcing to do that. Like, yes, there's excitement. Yes, state and local like has an opportunity to fill the gaps that are being left from the abandonment at the federal level. But in order for state and local to do that, there has to be money, and I don't see where that's coming from right now. I'm excited about that energy. I really hope we start to see answers to where that resource is coming. Maybe some of that's philanthropy. Some of that might be like, you know, the Gates announcement of winding down the funds sooner. That's exciting. I hope more philanthropies will step up and put more money into the system, because we need the resources to then capture that energy and move the ball forward.
Yeah, I would echo that. I was at a convening about a week and a half ago where there actually were a lot of funders talking about this concept, which is very new to me. Some of you may be familiar with this in the room, but it comes from an aspen grove in Utah called like Pando, and it's like this 1,000-year-old aspen grove or you're nodding. You know more about this than I do. Okay, so so the idea is that the root system of this grove has helped sustain this thriving ecosystem of aspen trees for like thousands and thousands of years. And a bunch of funders are getting together thinking about how they can support the root structure. And so I think when we're thinking about this as an ecosystem, while there's I mean, I think we're all living in the reality of the current moment, where there's a lot of really awful stuff going on. And I think there's a lot of creativity that's happening around that too. And people who are thinking about not just the decimation that's happening, but also what's the building that needs to happen going forward, and thinking about different creative root structures for what needs to get built, on the other side, because there's so much that's been decimated that we're going to have to spend much more time and get much more creative. And I do think some of that's coming from philanthropy, a little bit on the slower side, but I think the Gates decision, I think groups like Trust-Based Philanthropy just released a whole report for foundations and individuals to help accelerate giving. And it's not going to make up for government, but I think it at least allows the seeding of new possibility for building in the future, where you can at least like demonstrate and put together some pieces that then could be rebuilt or built anew, hopefully on the sooner side.
Um, I want to just add to the state and local point. I had the honor of serving as the head of state and local portfolio at 18F, and a lot of that work has interestingly carried forward in pockets, and pockets of goodness. And one of the things that has really carried forward is the conversation around what it means to build culture and shared resources and shared knowledge base when there are tight budgets at the state and local level. There are examples with mediocre success of joint procurements for WIC, but the conversation around joint procurement across jurisdiction is actually a really exciting one. And I think a lot of the challenge of this time my hope is seed innovation or inventive approaches that have yet to be tried. And we had a really great unconference with a series of the New England and Mid-Atlantic states just last Thursday, less than a week ago. My other hat I wear is I teach at the Kennedy School. And so it was really wonderful to bring together all of these states and have them be in conversation about starting 2 new digital services teams, guys. 2 new states with digital services teams.
That's so cool. That's
It's
going to bring us to
so
8 or
cool.
9.
That's right.
Yeah.
Finally. And so this is, if you're looking at state and local or county or regional governments, please keep looking. I think that is going to be such a hotbed. The second, I'm going to try to share some positive shifts, because the question was what's shifted in civic tech. I think civic tech has come much farther than just a decade ago in how we measure the impact of our work. Telling the story, making the case of why what we do matters has shifted significantly. I want to particularly shout out the behavioral sciences team that went from the GSA to the White House, that ended up starting the life experiences work at the Office of Management and Budget, that supported the presidential management agenda under Biden for customer experience improvement. All of that work was an amazing start, I think. And by the way, 6 people from that team, from the CX team, life experiences, are still inside. They have not left. And that work actually has carried forward in seeds through SNAP agencies across the country in a variety of other ways. And it's this amazing bridging between behavioral science and behavioral economics and product and technology, which allows us to set, for the very first time actually, a really clear line in the sand around what we're working towards. Politicals are often really scared, I've found, to say, we have to serve 3 million constituents in 3 years, right? That kind of thing. It's why I came and I get to say that now at my lab. But I wasn't allowed to say that when I was running or helping to run the $1 billion technology modernization fund. I had $1 billion and I could not say who I was trying to serve with that money. And now we can, and we have ways of measuring that work. And I think the third thing I want to say that's shifted a lot is new funding vehicles. Jamie Alexis mentioned philanthropy and the ways that they're trying to think a bit more creatively. I also think the Propel model, right? The model of connecting Walmart with Snap, LIHEAP with PG&E. Like that sort of model of financing civic tech is slowly growing as government budgets get cut. And so again, I think, never let a crisis go to waste. Some new innovation.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I'm hearing losses, I'm hearing some gains. Harking back to the last dark times of 2020, I don't know how many of you remember that the first Trump administration declined to collect COVID data nationally, and that there was a volunteer project which ended up being housed at the Atlantic that basically served as one small federal government function for an entire year until there was an administration that chose to do that. There's a lot in our communities that we can do if we can get support of other institutions. And I think the story I'm hearing from you all is we're losing footholds in some institutions, but we're gaining footholds in other institutions that are maybe broader reach in some ways. So I think, I don't know if somebody from Civic Tech is keeping time, but I think we are pretty close to going to audience questions. Is that right? Yeah, we might even be over, and I'm not sure how we're going to run it, but I hope you've all been thinking about what to ask this awesome panel, and I'm going to give Rob this microphone so that he can set it up. And I think we need to turn the recording off, so this will be a closed session. For the record. Yeah. Off the recording.